Single mom slipped biker a note at gas station. What he read made him call the entire club. The fluorescent lights of the highway rest stop buzzed overhead as Sarah Chen pulled her silver Civic into the parking space. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, her knuckles had gone white. In the rearview mirror, Emma sat quietly in her booster seat, clutching the stuffed rabbit that never left her side anymore. 5 years old, and already she'd learned that silence was safer than questions. Sarah's phone lit up again. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, all from the same person, all variations of the same threat wrapped in false concern. She didn't need to read them anymore. She knew every pattern, every manipulation, every carefully crafted phrase designed to make her feel like she was the problem. The rest stop was relatively empty. A family loading into a minivan. An elderly couple sharing coffee at a picnic table. And pulling up to the gas pumps, a convoy of motorcycles, not just one or two, but a dozen of them. Engines rumbling like distant thunder. Sarah watched them through her mirror. The riders wore leather vests with patches, their bikes gleaming chrome and paint. Society had taught her to be wary of people like this, to keep her distance, to assume danger. But society had also taught her that men in expensive suits who volunteered at the hospital fundraisers were trustworthy. That charm equaled safety. That a degree and a respectable job meant someone was good. Society had been wrong about that. One of the riders dismounted near the convenience store entrance. He was older, maybe late 50s, with gray streaking through his beard and tattoos visible on his forearms. He moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned not to make sudden movements, someone aware of how he might be perceived. Sarah made a decision born of pure desperation. She grabbed a napkin from the glove compartment and a pen that barely worked. Her hand shook as she wrote, making the letters messy and urgent. My daughter and I need help. My ex is tracking my phone, says he'll take Emma if I run, says no one will believe me. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., 2547 Riverside Apartments, Unit 12. I don't expect you to save us. Just please witness, please see. If something happens, someone needs to know. Sarah, 555-0198. She folded it quickly, her heart hammering. This was insane. This was desperate. This was potentially the stupidest thing she'd ever done, or the bravest. She couldn't tell which anymore. As she walked past the biker toward the store entrance, their eyes met for just a second. She pressed the napkin into his hand as she passed, whispering a single word. Please. Then she kept walking, not looking back, her whole body trembling. She bought a bottle of water she didn't want, paid with shaking hands, and returned to her car where Emma was waiting. Behind her, the biker stood frozen, looking down at the napkin in his palm. His name was Marcus Webb, though most people called him Bear. 43 years old, former Marine, current owner of a small construction company, and a member of the Desert Riders for the past decade. He read the note once, then again. The handwriting was frantic, desperate, real in a way that made his chest tighten. Bear had a daughter. She was 19 now, away at college. But he remembered what it felt like to hold something so precious that you'd do anything to protect it. He remembered coming home from his second deployment to find his wife gone, his baby girl 3 years older, and a whole life he'd missed while he was serving overseas. He'd spent years making up for lost time, years proving he could be steady and present and trustworthy, years earning back what he'd thought was gone forever. He pulled out his phone and dialed. 2 rings. Then a voice answered. Marcus? Prophet, I need the crew, all of them. We've got a situation. On the other end, David Prophet Martinez didn't hesitate. 20 years as a social worker before retiring, had taught him to recognize urgency. What kind of situation? The kind where tomorrow morning we show up and make sure someone stays safe. The kind where we be the witnesses nobody else wants to be. Text me the details. I'll make the calls. Bear looked up, tried to spot the silver Civic, but it was already pulling away, disappearing into evening traffic. He carefully folded the napkin and put it in his vest pocket, right over his heart. He didn't know this woman, didn't know her story or what she'd survived. But he knew that look in her eyes, that split second of terror mixed with the faintest flicker of hope. He'd seen it before in mirrors, in the faces of people he'd helped, in veterans coming home broken and looking for a reason to keep going. This was someone choosing to fight instead of surrender, and he'd be damned if he let her fight alone. By 8 that evening, the Desert Riders Clubhouse was full. Not the stereotypical biker bar with darkness and danger, but a renovated garage bay with workbenches, comfortable seating, photographs covering the walls showing charity rides and community events. These weren't outlaws playing dress-up. These were teachers, contractors, nurses, and veterans who'd found family in each other. Prophet stood at the front, his salt and pepper hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on his nose as he examined the napkin Bear had brought. Around him, 14 other members listened in focused silence. "Sarah Chen," said Carmen Cipher Rodriguez, her laptop already open, fingers flying across the keyboard. Former military intelligence analyst, currently worked in cybersecurity, and could find information faster than anyone Bear had ever met. Age 32, works as a pediatric nurse at County General. Daughter Emma, age 5, enrolled at Sunshine Preschool. She paused, scrolling deeper. Father listed as Michael Chen. Let me dig into him. Carmen worked silently for several minutes, the only sound the clicking of keys and the occasional murmur of conversation. Then her expression changed. Found something. Michael Chen, 35, attorney at Whitmore and Associates. Corporate law specializes in mergers and acquisitions. That doesn't sound too bad, someone said. Wait. Carmen's face darkened. He had a previous marriage. Ex-wife is Catherine Chen, now Catherine Morrison. She filed for an emergency protective order 4 years ago. Alleged physical abuse and coercive control. The room went quiet. Where is she now? Bear asked. Portland. Moved there 3 years ago with her son. Changed her last name back to her maiden name. Carmen looked up. The protective order was granted initially then. She withdrew it 3 weeks later. Everyone knew what that meant. Pressure, threats, fear disguised as reconciliation. Can we talk to her? Asked James Doc Patterson, a former paramedic who now ran a community health clinic. Carmen shook her head. I can try, but I'm betting she won't talk. Too scared, too traumatized, or he's got something on her. Prophet leaned forward. What else do we know about Michael Chen? Clean record. Not a single arrest, not even a traffic ticket. Member of the Bar Association. Volunteers with legal aid once a month. Plays golf with 3 judges and the district attorney. Carmen's voice was flat. He's connected, protected. The kind of person the system automatically believes. His uncle is Robert Chen, Superior Court Judge, she continued. His college roommate is now a deputy police chief. He donates to every political campaign in the county. This isn't just an abuser. This is someone who's built an infrastructure around his ability to abuse. Bear's jaw tightened. So, if Sarah reports him... She already did, Carmen interrupted. Found a police report from 8 months ago. She went to the station, filed a complaint, showed them photographs of bruises. Michael showed up 48 hours later with 2 character witnesses, his volunteer records, and a story about Sarah being mentally unstable and keeping Emma from him out of spite. What happened to the report? Dismissed. Officer noted that without corroborating evidence, and with Mr. Chen's spotless reputation, it appeared to be a custody dispute rather than a criminal matter. The room erupted in angry muttering. These weren't naive people. They'd all seen how the system worked and who it worked for. "So, tomorrow," Prophet said, raising his voice to cut through the noise, "we show up. We be visible. We be witnesses. We document everything. And we make sure that this time, someone believes her." Hands went up around the room, every single person volunteering without hesitation. But they had no idea what they were really walking into. Because while they were planning, Michael Chen was planning too. And he'd been preparing for this possibility far longer than they had. Sarah spent that night in a budget motel 20 miles outside the city. The kind of place that accepted cash and didn't look too closely at their guests. She'd turned off her phone after sending one last text to her sister. "If something happens to me, take care of Emma." Michael did it. Emma was asleep now, finally, after crying for an hour because she wanted to go home, wanted her toys, wanted her normal life. Sarah had held her and lied, saying they were on an adventure, that everything would be okay soon. She wasn't sure she believed it herself. The bruise on her ribs ached where Michael had grabbed her 3 days ago. Nothing broken, but the pain was a constant reminder. He was always careful like that. Never the face where people could see. Never hard enough to require a hospital visit that might create documentation. Just enough to hurt, to remind her who was in control. The last time had been different, though. Emma had seen it, had started screaming. And something in Michael's expression had changed. Not remorse, calculation. That's when Sarah knew she was running out of time. If Emma started talking at school, if teachers started asking questions, Michael would act. He'd already threatened it enough times. He'd file for emergency custody, claim Sarah was alienating Emma from him, present himself as the concerned father protecting his daughter from an unstable mother. And the system would believe him. The system always believed people like Michael. Her phone buzzed. One text from an unknown number. "We'll be there. You're not alone. Bear." Sarah read it 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. She didn't know if this biker and his friends could actually help. Didn't know if showing up would be enough. But for the first time in 2 years, she felt like someone was on her side. Someone who didn't need her to prove anything, who just believed her. She cried herself to sleep that night, but they were different tears, not hopeless ones, hopeful ones. Morning came too quickly and too slowly. Sarah dressed Emma in her favorite purple dress, the one with the butterfly on the pocket. If today went wrong, if Michael somehow won, she wanted Emma to remember feeling pretty and loved. They drove to the apartment in silence. Sarah had already packed everything that mattered into 2 suitcases in the trunk. If this worked, if she got some kind of protection or documentation or just enough witnesses that Michael couldn't twist reality, they'd leave immediately. Head to her sister's in Nevada and start over. The apartment complex looked ordinary in the morning light. 2-story buildings arranged around a central courtyard, parking spaces mostly empty because it was Saturday, and people were sleeping in or running errands. Sarah's hands shook as she unlocked the apartment door. Unit 12, just like she'd written on the napkin. Just like she'd told that biker stranger who might not even show up. "Mommy, are we home?" Emma asked, confused. Just for a little bit, baby. We need to pick up some things. But Sarah wasn't here for belongings. She was here because Michael had sent a text at 7 this morning. I'm picking up Emma at 10. We need to discuss your behavior. Be there. Not a request, a command. And Sarah had learned the hard way that ignoring his commands made things worse. 9:45. 15 minutes until Michael arrived. No sign of any motorcycles. No sign of Bear or anyone else. Sarah's stomach dropped. Maybe he'd thought better of it. Maybe he'd thrown away the napkin and forgotten all about the desperate woman at the rest stop. She was about to be alone again, facing Michael again. And this time, she'd burned her last bridge by trying to get help. Then she heard it. Low at first, then building. The unmistakable rumble of motorcycle engines. Not just one or two. Many. Sarah ran to the window. Her breath caught. The parking lot was filling with motorcycles. One after another, rolling in with practiced precision. They parked in a formation that created a semicircle facing her building, engines cutting out one by one until there was silence. 15 riders, all wearing the same vests with patches showing a desert landscape and a rising sun, all looking up at her building. Bear stood in the center, pulling off his helmet. He met her eyes through the window and nodded once. We're here. We've got you. Sarah started crying again. 9:58. Michael's black BMW pulled into the lot. He parked, got out, and froze. 15 motorcycles. 15 riders standing in formation, and every single one of them watching him. Michael's expression went through several changes. Confusion, anger, then calculation. He pulled out his phone, started recording. I'm here to pick up my daughter for court-ordered visitation, he said loudly, clearly for the camera. And I'm being intimidated by what appears to be a motorcycle gang. I feel threatened. I'm documenting this for legal purposes. Bear didn't rise to the bait, just stood there, calm and still. Sir, this is a public parking lot. We're not preventing you from going anywhere, we're just present. Present, Michael repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm a respected attorney. I have every right to see my daughter. And when the police arrive, we'll see how present you want to be. Already called them, Carmen said, stepping forward. She was dressed professionally, laptop bag over her shoulder. I'm Carmen Rodriguez. I'm a certified victims advocate. I've also contacted Child Protective Services to conduct a welfare check. They should be arriving shortly as well. Michael's mask cracked slightly. A welfare check? On what grounds? On the grounds that the child's mother has documented evidence of domestic violence and fears for her daughter's safety. That's a lie. Sarah is mentally unstable. She's kept Emma from me, filled her head with false accusations. I'm the victim here. Then you won't mind speaking with CPS when they arrive. Michael's jaw clenched. He looked at the bikers, at Carmen, at the neighbors starting to come out to watch. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to intimidate Sarah into compliance, take Emma, and use the custody as leverage. Instead, he had witnesses, cameras, documentation. A police cruiser pulled in, then another. Officers stepped out, taking in the scene with practiced caution. And that's when Emma appeared at the apartment window beside her mother. 5 years old, purple dress, stuffed rabbit clutched tight. She saw her father and pressed closer to Sarah, her small face fearful. One of the officers, a woman named Detective Lisa Moreno, noticed immediately. Noticed the child's body language. Noticed how Sarah's hand shook as she held her daughter. Noticed Michael's barely contained anger despite his controlled words. Moreno had been doing this job for 18 years. She knew what fear looked like. "Mr. Chen," she said calmly, "I'd like to speak with you and Ms. Chen separately. Would you both be willing to come down to the station to provide statements?" "I'm not going anywhere," Michael said. "I haven't done anything wrong. They're the ones." "Sir, I'm not arresting anyone. I'm asking you to voluntarily provide your side of the story. Unless you'd prefer I speak with your daughter first?" Michael's expression changed. That was a threat he understood. If they interviewed Emma, if the child said something, if there was any documentation of her words, fine. But I'm calling my attorney first. "That's your right." As Michael stepped away to make his call, Detective Moreno approached the bikers. Bear tensed, ready for accusations or demands to leave. Instead, Moreno said quietly, "Thank you for calling this in. Can I get witness statements from all of you?" Bear blinked, surprised. You don't want us to leave?" Moreno looked at the 15 riders, at Sarah and Emma in the window, at Michael pacing angrily on his phone. "I've been a cop for 18 years. I've seen a lot of domestic violence cases. And I've seen a lot of victims who don't get help because they don't have witnesses, don't have support, don't have anyone willing to stand up for them." She met Bear's eyes. "So no, I don't want you to leave. I want you to tell me exactly what happened and why you're here." And that's when everything changed. The next 3 hours were a blur. Statements taken, photographs documented. CPS arrived and spoke with Emma gently, carefully, in a way that let the 5-year-old tell her truth without leading or pressure. Sarah provided her phone, showing the hundreds of threatening texts. Showed medical records from the 3 times she'd gone to urgent care for injuries she'd lied about. Showed emails where Michael had threatened to destroy her custody rights if she ever tried to leave. Carmen provided documentation of Michael's ex-wife's protective order. Contact information for Catherine, who finally agreed to provide a statement when she learned she wasn't the only one. And the bikers provided witness statements. 15 different accounts of a frightened woman passing a note, of showing up to make sure she wasn't alone, of Michael's behavior when he arrived. By 2 in the afternoon, Michael Chen was gone. Not arrested, not yet, but informed that CPS was opening an investigation, that his visitation with Emma was suspended pending a hearing, that Sarah had been granted an emergency protective order. He'd left in his BMW, making threats about lawsuits and consequences. But for the first time, his threats felt hollow. Because this time, Sarah wasn't alone. Detective Moreno approached Sarah as she was preparing to leave. "Miss Chen, I want you to know something. I believed you 8 months ago when you came in. I read your report. I saw the photographs. But my superiors..." She shook her head. "The system isn't always fair. It favors people with resources and connections. I'm sorry we failed you before." Sarah swallowed hard. "But not this time. Not this time. This time you have documentation, witnesses, and a child whose statements corroborate your account. This time, it's different." Sarah looked at Bear and the other riders. "Because of them. Yes, because of them." That evening, Sarah and Emma drove to Nevada. 2 suitcases, 1 stuffed rabbit, and a phone full of new contacts. Numbers for Carmen, for Prophet, for Detective Moreno, for a domestic violence hotline that actually answered. As they crossed the state line, Emma asked, "Mommy, are the motorcycle people our friends now?" Sarah smiled through tears. "Yes, baby, they're our friends." 3 months later, the Desert Riders added something to their regular activities. Small cards, simply designed, placed in rest stops and gas stations throughout the state. Just a phone number and a message. If you need help, we listen. You're not alone. They called it Sarah's Cards. The first call came within a week. A woman in Tucson whose boyfriend had taken her car keys and phone. The riders showed up, helped her get to a shelter, documented everything. The second call came from a man whose husband had been quietly draining their bank accounts and threatening to out him to his conservative family if he left. The riders connected him with legal aid and a therapist who specialized in LGBTQ domestic violence. By the end of the year, they'd responded to 37 calls. Not all of them required dramatic interventions. Some people just needed someone to believe them. Some needed a ride. Some needed witnesses during a difficult conversation. Some needed help moving out while their abuser was at work. Every single person needed to know they weren't alone. Bear kept a folder at the clubhouse. Thank you letters, photos of survivors starting new lives, drawings from children who were learning to smile again. He read them sometimes when he needed reminding why they did this work. One letter in particular stayed with him. From Sarah, 6 months after that day, in the parking lot. Dear Bear and the Desert Riders, I think about that day at the rest stop constantly. About how desperate I was, how terrified, how certain that nothing would work. I was ready to give up. But I gave you that note. And you didn't throw it away. You showed up. You witnessed. You believed me. You made it impossible for Michael to control the narrative like he always did before. Emma and I are safe now. We have a small apartment in Nevada. I got a job at the children's hospital here. Emma started kindergarten and she's making friends and laughing again. She still asks about the motorcycle people and wants to know when she'll see you again. I don't know how to thank you for giving us our lives back, for being the strangers who became heroes, for proving that there's still goodness in the world. If anyone ever questions why you do what you do, tell them about us. Tell them about a desperate woman at a rest stop and 15 bikers who decided one person's cry for help mattered. Thank you doesn't feel like enough, but thank you anyway. With love and gratitude, Sarah and Emma. Bear folded the letter carefully and added it to the collection. Then he pulled out his phone and added a reminder for next month to check in with Sarah. Because that's what family did. Even family you met through a napkin at a rest stop. The work continued. More cards distributed, more calls answered. More lives changed because someone decided that courage could be contagious and kindness could be powerful. And community meant protecting each other. Not every story had a perfect ending. Some people went back to their abusers. Some situations escalated despite intervention. Some calls came too late, but enough of them worked. Enough lives were saved. Enough children learned they deserved safety. Enough people found the courage to leave because someone else found the courage to help. And it all started because one desperate woman took a chance on a stranger wearing leather and riding a motorcycle. Because she chose hope over resignation. Because she believed that maybe, just maybe, the people society told her to fear were actually the people who would save her. She was right. The Desert Riders continue their work to this day. Still answering calls, still showing up, still being witnesses, still proving that family isn't defined by blood, but by who stands beside you when everything falls apart. And somewhere in Nevada, a woman named Sarah Chen lives without fear. Her daughter laughs freely. They've built a life defined by safety instead of survival. And when Emma asks about that day, about the motorcycles and the people who helped them, Sarah tells her the truth. Sometimes angels wear leather jackets. Sometimes heroes ride Harleys. Sometimes the best people are the ones you least expect. Emma nods, understanding in the way children do. And she keeps drawing her pictures. Not families with angry scribbles anymore, but families surrounded by guardian angels on Motorcycles. Protection comes in many forms. Sometimes it comes from strangers who refuse to throw away desperate notes. Sometimes it comes from communities that decide everyone deserves safety. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people who do extraordinary things because it's the right thing to do. This is a story about courage, about community, about choosing to help when you could just as easily look away, about being the person someone remembers as the one who changed everything. Be that person, answer that call, believe that story. Stand beside someone when they need it most. Because somewhere right now, someone is writing a desperate note. Someone is looking for hope. Someone needs to know they're not alone. Be their answer. Be their hope. Be proof that goodness still exists. You never know when a single act of kindness might save a life. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.